health of women and children. On Thursday, an international expert team from the World Health Organization arrived in central China's Wuhan. In Uganda, polls have closed, giving way to counting of votes, the most critical moments of the 2021 general elections. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The President of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez, will officially promulgate this Thursday the law of interruption of the pregnancy as well as the law of attention and integral care of the health during the gestation and the first childhood. Both regulations, approved on December the 30th after an intense debate in the Senate, will be sanctioned in an official act from the Casa Rosada. The law of interruption of pregnancy will guarantee care in the public health system and suppresses a legislation that dates from 1921, which criminalized women who practice abortion. The second law that Fernandez will promulgate is linked to the integral health care of children under 3 years old, in seeking, among other things, the fulfillment of a plan of mandatory vaccinations linked to the National Health Program. The government of Guatemala will decree this Thursday a state of prevention in view of the imminent arrival of the new migrant caravan, which has already left from San Pedro Sula in Honduras. The Guatemalan executive will restrict the passage of this new caravan as it does not have the proper health security requirements in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. Officials assured that the entry of migrants into the country could represent a danger to the population. The decree authorizes the state forces to dissolve the meetings of demonstrations that are not permitted, as well as to subject those who participate in the caravan to registration, which could severely affect the human rights of the marchers. And now we go to Colombia, where the human rights defender Amparo Tolosa was notified this Wednesday by the National Army that it is not possible to guarantee her security in the sectors that are controlled by irregular groups in the territory of the southern department of Bolívar. The news was received by the social leader, who regrets obtaining such an answer since she is forced to abandon her work for land restitution in the sector, which she was carrying out with campesinos from the area and state entities. The document received by the activist referred to the fact that the area where she intended to work is controlled by an organized criminal armed group known as Los Ratones, the mice, so the military unit recommended her not to move on the sidewalks since it was not possible to guarantee her safety. Tolosa denounced that at any moment she could be left without protection measures. The Dessalines People's Movement, MOPOD, in reference to the Haitian revolutionary leader Jean-Jacques Dessalines of the colonial period, and other opposition organizations have called on the people of Haiti for general uprising against the government of Jovenel Moïse. The MOPOD, the Democratic and Popular Sector, and the leadership of the Democratic Opposition have called for a general uprising this Friday. They demand the immediate exit of Moïse from the presidency, whom they accuse of acts of corruption and of not promoting national production. The general coordinator of the MOPOD, André Victor, proposes to promote the establishment of a transitional government after the exit of Moïse. The country faces a new resurgence of the COVID-19 and national elections, along with a constitutional change on the horizon. In Bolivia, the government purchased 5 million additional vaccines against COVID-19, which will make possible the vaccinate of the entire population that is eligible. Our correspondent, Freddy Morales, brings us more details.
The contract was signed to obtain 5 million vaccines from the AstraZeneca laboratory, developed with the Oxford University.
We have a plan for the coronavirus pandemic. One of the fundamental elements is the vaccination. The second element is the massive test to be able to have diagnosis And the third element is the coordination to work on the assistance on time, the isolation and the treatment of the people.
The first contract covering 5.2 million doses was previously made for the Russian vaccine Sputnik, so the number of doses is over 10 million.
With this AstraZeneca vaccine and the negotiation to join the COVAX system, and additionally the purchase we made of the Russian vaccine, we will vaccinate 100% of the eligible population in the country.
President Arce warned that the immunization process will begin in 2 months, so he called on the population to adopt maximum measures to prevent contagion.
The population has to become aware that during these 2 months that we have left, we have to resist. We have to strengthen and increase the preventive measures against the coronavirus. We have to intensify the care, the biosecurity measures at home and the workplace, everywhere.
The government strategy to face the second wave of the pandemic includes the mobilization of the leaders of social organizations in neighborhoods and rural areas to encourage the population to be tested free of charge, to enforce the protocol for taking care of the sick and the forthcoming vaccination.
We, the leaders of social union organizations, will be able to conduct fieldwork in the different neighborhoods, provinces, municipalities, in remote areas to reach every house, every home.
According to doctors, the so-called second wave of the disease is more aggressive, so there is a debate about the possibility of adopting restrictions on the mobility of people and vehicles. With a population of 11 million people, over 10 million doses of vaccines will begin to be administered free of charge in March.
And we'll go now to a short break. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and Gladys teleSUR. Welcome back to From the South. This Thursday, an international expert team from the World Health Organization arrived in central China's Wuhan. The team will carry out work to investigate the origins of the novel coronavirus and will conduct joint research with Chinese scientists. The WHO said the team is comprised of 13 experts from 10 different countries, with China's National Health Commission saying the group will go through relevant quarantine procedures required under the country's epidemic control measures before conducting fieldwork. China has been working closely with the WHO since the start of the outbreak and invited WHO experts to carry out cooperation on origin tracing in February and July last year. And China on Thursday said that a U.S. order to halt imports of cotton and tomatoes from its Xinjiang region over alleged human rights abuses will disrupt global supply chains and harm businesses and consumers.
China is firmly opposed to this. The so-called forced labor issue is a lie of the century fabricated out of the thin air by certain institutions and personnel of the individual Western countries, including the United States, with the aim of restricting and suppressing relevant Chinese parties and enterprises and curbing China's development. This is not only a violation of international trade rules and market economy principles, but also a disruption of global industrial chains and supply chains. It is detrimental to the interests of the enterprises and consumers of all countries, including the United States itself. The U.S. side should respect the basic facts, immediately revoke its wrong decisions, and stop interfering in China's internal affairs through issues related to Xinjiang. China will take all necessary measures to defend its national interests and dignity and firmly safeguard its sovereignty, security, and development interests.
The number of coronavirus fatalities reported in Germany reached an all-time high on Thursday. The German health authorities reported more than 1,200 fatalities and over 25,000 infections in the last 24 hours. The number of new infections per 100,000 inhabitants reported to the health authorities within 7 days was 151. Its previous peak was reached on December 22nd with 197. To this date, Germany registers more than 1.9 million COVID-19 cases and more than 44,000 fatalities.
What is important is that not only the number of tests, but that they are used in a sophisticated manner. Tests must be targeted, and that means that the mere quantity of tests per number of population is not a benchmark for good or bad use of testing. And I want to make that clear. The number of tests is of course going up. We see that already. And we have a good overview because we are actively looking for information, and we are not only getting that from the registration systems but also directly from the laboratories. What we know as of this morning is that we have 16 cases infected with the UK mutation, and of 15 of those I know that they are associated with travel to the UK. That means people who came from there or went there and came back and brought this mutation as far as we know by now. A 16th case emerged today, but I don't know whether he traveled, and we have 4 cases from South Africa, and all of those are connected to travel as well.
The World Health Organization WHO Regional Director for Europe, Hans Kluge, on Thursday confirmed that the British strain of the new coronavirus has been detected in 25 European countries, including Russia. Although the possible consequences of this new strain are generating concern, he recalled that the new coronavirus changes over time, just like any other virus. Therefore, European countries must devote more efforts to the genetic sequencing of the virus and increase the exchange of information. WHO scientist Oleg Benesh pointed out that although legitimate doubts about the effectiveness of vaccines against the new strains could rise, there is no evidence that the acquired immunity does not protect against the new strains. Kluge, the WHO representative for the European branch, says 95% of vaccine doses so far administered worldwide are limited to 10 countries and calls for a more equitable distribution.
95% of the 23.5 million doses of vaccines administered worldwide are in 10 countries. We simply cannot allow any countries or communities to be left without attention.
An aerial search for victims and wreckage from a crashed Indonesian plane expanded Thursday as divers continued combing the debris-littered seabed looking for the cockpit voice recorded from the lost Sriwijaya airjet. The Boeing 737-500 disappeared Saturday minutes after taking off from Jakarta with 62 people aboard. The other black box containing flight data was recovered Tuesday, and search personnel have also recovered plane parts and human remains from the Java Sea. So far, searchers have sent 141 body bags containing human remains to police identification experts. Families have been providing DNA samples to the Disaster Victim Identification Unit, which on Wednesday said it had identified 6 victims, including a flight attendant and an off-duty pilot.
I, captain of the ship, report that we have received from divers as many as 36 body bags containing body remains and 1 body bag containing debris, and I hand them over to the relevant authorities.
And South Korea's Supreme Court sentenced former President Park Geun-hye was to 20 years in prison due to a corruption case that removed her from office in 2017. Park was sentenced on charges of accepting illegal funds from 3 heads of the National Intelligence Service worth $3.19 million between May 2013 and September 2016. The Supreme Court upheld its previous ruling, including a $15 million fine and the decision to drop the extortion charges and some of the abuse of power charges against her. The former president will be released in 2039. And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. In Uganda, polls have closed, giving way to the counting of votes, the most critical moment of the 2021 general elections. Authorities report that there have not been any major incidents during the day, aside from some delays in the distribution of electoral material and long lines at the polling station. Ugandans voted in a tense election under heavy security and an internet blackout. Current President Yoweri Museveni seeks a 6th term in office against former pop star Kiluani Stemambu, also known as Bobi Wine. The opposition leader has already said he will not recognize the results of the elections. Some 18 million voters registered for the presidential and parliamentary vote. Museveni has been in office since 1986, when he helped to end years of tyranny under Idi Amin.
What's here today in Uganda is here by elections. They elect our new president, which is today.
So could you tell me?
So, most of us feel good, especially old people like we. But there's some more young boys, girls, they don't know what they're doing. They just follow whoever comes in. Just give something little, they shout, make noise. So that's why you get tear gas because of these young children. They don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
And this expects a lot to change.
As Ugandans cast their votes in the presidential and parliamentary elections, they say they hope for peaceful polls. On Thursday, a fire raced through a sprawling Rohingya refugee camp in southern Bangladesh, destroying hundreds of homes. The UNHCR said more than 550 homes sheltering about 3,500 people, as well as 150 shops, were either totally or partially destroyed in the fire. The fire broke out early Thursday in Nayapara camp in Cox's Bazar district, where more than 1 million Rohingya refugees from Myanmar are staying. Authorities so far have not reported serious injuries. The UN agency said affected families were being provided shelter materials, winter clothes, hot meals, and medical care. Rebel forces in the Central African Republic mounted their closest attack yet to the capital, Bangui, this Wednesday, before being pushed back with the loss of a peacekeeper, according to the United Nations. Combined forces of the Central African Republic military, Russia, and the UN repelled an attack by the group Coalitions of Patriots for Change on the outskirts of the capital, which saw residents flee the affected suburbs for the city center, which is considered safer. The latest attacks comes after rebels launched an offensive vowing to march on the capital ahead of last month's presidential election, in what the government has called an attempted coup. The United Nations Secretary General and the Security Council strongly condemned Wednesday's attack and called on all parties to bring an end to the violence and engage in constructive dialogue. The UN Forces spokesperson said that several rebels were captured and more than 10 were killed. Rwandan and Russian troops were deployed last month to support the government under bilateral accords.
Up around 5 a.m. in the morning, I too heard gunshots and I was scared. I told them to wait for me so I could see things, and I told them I would find them. Then they left without turning back. So far, I do not know where my family is, how they are going to live, if they have run away, how they are going to live. And with everything happening, we who sell stuff to be able to eat, that's how we make a living. We sell things, but with all that's happening, how can we sell things? How can we find something to eat in these times? We do not want this.
And Jordan's Prime Minister Bisher al-Qassawner said his country will be easing curfew measures, making the announcement on the same day that Jordan began administering coronavirus vaccines. He said the curfew will be eased next Friday, adding that schools will be reopened gradually as the next semester. The government will be keeping in place the partial nightly curfew from midnight until 6 a.m. Jordan time. More than 150,000 Jordanians have registered to receive a vaccine, while others are hesitant because of safety concerns. Lebanese authorities began enforcing an 11-day nationwide shutdown and round-the-clock curfew Thursday, hoping to limit the spread of coronavirus infections. For the first time, residents are required to request an hour permit to be allowed to leave the house for emergencies, including going to the bakery, pharmacist, doctor, hospital, or airport. Authorities came under pressure to take a tougher approach after the country's hospitals ran out of beds, with daily infections reaching an all-time high of more than 5,400 cases last week. And we have come to the end of this news brief, but remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For Telesur English, I'm Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.